Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for investing your time with us today. Welcome to the first edition of Tissue and Paper Bangkok. So it's going to be our post-pandemic opportunities ahead for the paper, tissue, and related industries in APAC, disruption and discovery. Today, we have an amazing panel where we'll be discussing about the trends we need to keep our eyes on that could directly impact your business. So just before we begin, just a slide on the Q&A and technical support. So this webinar is designed to be interactive. The dock of widgets at the bottom of the screen will allow you to learn about today's speaker, share this webinar via social media outlets, and participate in the Q&A sessions that take place at the end of our presentation. Lastly, if you're experiencing any technical problems, please click the help widget found at the bottom of your screen or type your issues into the Q&A area, and we will be glad to offer one-to-one assistance. Okay, so next. Our goal today is that whatever your role is in the industry, that you will come away with something, a fresh idea, a fresh perspective, new strategy that you can actually apply to be more successful in your business. I'll kick off the conversation, asking about questions that draw out some of the high-level themes and trends we should be thinking about. And then the last 15 minutes of our time today, we'll open up the floor to give you an opportunity to ask specific questions that you might have been thinking about to help you navigate the upcoming opportunities and challenges to be more successful in your business. So before we start, let me introduce our panelists we have with us today for the discussion. So we have coming from Australia, Mr. Tim Woods, the Managing Director of Industry Edge. They are Australia's leading data analysis and intelligence firm in the fiber, wood products, paper, and fiber packaging sectors, including recovered fiber. And next, we have Mr. Ronaldo Paruca, SVP Strategic Technology Manager with Void. He has been with them since 1988, taking on several management positions, such as project manager, engineering manager, product development, and he has spent 8 years in sales and technology for Asia Pacific and strategic technology management. Last but not least, we have Mr. Somev, principal at A3 Management Consulting, the leading advisor of choice to the world's forest, pulp, paper, and paperboard, tissue industry, and energy sector. Passionate about bringing strategic insight and solutions to forestry, fiber, paper, and paperboard and tissue segment. So from a start, maybe I will pass the floor over to Mr. Somev so that he can actually give us a little update from our last webinar we had in September 2020 last year. So Somev, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the good introduction, and I'm very happy to be here. We have a couple of slides. So yeah, just to give a background, and then we can go into the discussions later. So let me share my screen. Do let me know if you can see it, and what do you see? That's important also. Hope it's visible. All right. So Andy, are you able to see in the, let's say, full screen mode at the moment?
Yes, please go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, great. Right. So welcome everyone. It's been an interesting journey for us. I would say in the past couple of months, quite a lot of interesting things happened as well. And of course, we will go a bit detailed on that. Just wanted to share before we actually jump into the slides is that I was having an discussion with one gentleman, and he told me the tissue industry actually started in the 1920s. So I would say it's been 100 years and 101, I would say, if we don't pick up a right, correct date. So it has been a remarkable journey, I would say, in terms of a segment. It's very different from what it started. And let's look into some of this, what's been happening in the past, let's say, 6 months or so. Yeah. So there's quite a lot of text, but what we wanted to share was that from what happened in the past is that there has been a spike. Everyone knows about it. There was a lot of hoarding, which is obvious, as you can see in the picture. People were crazy about stocking up. So that happened. And there was a kind of a thinking that it might follow again when the second wave came in, or a third wave in some other countries, which didn't happen. So, and what it says is that most of these companies, most of the producers have geared themselves. They are more prepared. They're more aligned with the supply chain to support, and that's why there have been less of these issues in terms of shortage or any of these supply chain problems. And on the other side, the consumer has kind of refined their approach. So they don't stock because they understand that this would be there. So both sides, there have been a bit of understanding. So it was, in a way, quite interesting to see that there was not much spike. It did happen, but it didn't happen like quite heavily. But what thing that came back and was, let's say, quite obvious again, was that shortages in terms of, let's say, any kind of logistic problems in terms of supply chain related topics. So that happened, and that might be there in some other regions which are heavily dependent on suppliers from outside. And the lockdown are continuing. There have been partial lockdowns in a lot of places. It has continued to affect, let's say, the consumer segment in a positive way. So because people are staying at home, it has continued to affect negatively to the away from home segment because of the empty offices and all that. So this has been happening, and as you can see, this would not be, let's say, the new normal. It will change. There would be a big changes in the tissue segment as we go forward. So that's happening on the consumer side. In terms of, let's say, producers, there has been quite a lot of tremendous effort in trying to simplify their supply chains, in trying to ensure that they have everything ready. There has been a lot of increase in the output capacity, increase in, let's say, speeding up the rollout plans, as we have seen in case of two examples in Thailand. Have been more focused on diversification, which was happening in the past, but it has got more traction and got more, it has happened more faster. And there's something new that's been happening, which probably was there, but people was not so interested. And that is like online sales channel. So there's quite a lot of focus happening. A lot of brands are trying to focus a bit more, trying to provide that they can buy online, stocking it on different online channels. So that's happening. And we also see a bit of like, okay, the sales were not spiking, but it was quite stable. But the raw material cost and the container shortage did impact the profit margin. So we have a bit of information on that right after one or two slides. So that's kind of interesting what happened since we talked last time. And what we see in the future, well, it is positive, and it seems like there's quite a lot of movement towards some growth in some of these segments. Sub-segments will be happening, and it seems like quite promising. We have some information on that as well. And just to give a snapshot about what we talked earlier, and to put a bit of names here. So you can see in case of NTPM, which they have a bit of declining sale, and however, because of the higher selling price and low cost, they were able to boost their margins. And more focus on some countries which were, let's say, not so much in radar. So Vietnam is there, and that's happening. And that's why they are also trying to increase their capacity output in Vietnam by 20%. So some of these interests have been done. APP has been quite resilient. It has been very good in terms of, let's say, managing the situation because of sales surge. They have quite a good growth going on. So that's happening. And they are temporarily retasking some of these for other lines. So this been happening, and they continued their movement in that direction. Barely Joker has been more on online focus, and they also been rolling out their production plans a bit faster. So that's they started this tissue production line, which was planned since 2019, and that happened. So quite a lot of good news, quite a lot of mixed bag of things happening, and it's all kind of gearing towards being more easier to support the customers, more so easier to be the first to be there whenever there is a need. So quite a lot of positive energy and good things happening. And just trying to show a bit on a global scale what's happening, so that because there's kind of ripple effect whenever you see on, and it's kind of mimics in every regions. The rising pulp price is a big topic, and I think in case of tissue producer, it's a definitely a big one, because almost 80% is in some way market pulp, not market pulp, but 80% is pulp. And that is an important. And we see that, okay, the consumer segments will continue to grow. Away from home has a bit of impact. It will not be permanent, but it would not be so big either. It will gradually try to recover. Margins are still going to be a bit of effect because of the rising pulp prices, because of some of these other logistic related increase in the cost factors. So that's happening, and this would also somehow come here eventually in Southeast Asia. So that's something to watch out for, and I'm sure a lot of them are quite geared already to take care of this kind of challenge. And just to highlight, this is happening in other parts of the world, and something of this will follow suit here. So just try to show a bit about what's being see here. We talked about the pulp prices, and as for tissue producers, it is a very important topic because, as I said, it's almost 80% of your cost item. And there's been a solid demand. It's mostly driven by China, and it has been steady. We have adjusted this the information as compared to last time, and we see a bit of dip, and then it's going to catch up with the previous targets. Price-wise, you see quite a lot of cyclic downturn, and then again trying to revive to the old. And that's been happening, let's say, in the recent couple of weeks. And it has been quite a lot of growth in terms of the pulp price. And it has to do a lot with, let's say, the bottlenecks that happened, weakening of the dollar, and also a lot of speculation that's happening. I mean, like the Shanghai futures that's been rolled out. And a lot of other buyers are restocking. So they're trying to be smart and try to buy much more when there is still good pricing, and so that they can be well prepared for in the future. To say it's a bit of a cyclic nature of the pulp pricing. It would reach a certain point where it would be stable, and then it would remain at that point for a certain moment. And just we have to keep a look out for this kind of situation. And coming back to here in terms of, let's say, what does it mean? Let's say we talked a lot about what the different producers are doing. We talked about the sales increase or then slow down. What does it mean in terms of, let's say, future prospects? So we have adjusted this, and if you a lot of you might remember last time it was 5.2. Now we have looked at again what would be the situation, and we're looking at a 5% growth. And it would, what it means is around 390,000 tons in the coming years to 2025. There's quite a lot of interest in Southeast Asia, quite a lot of interest. And the reason is there is quite a lot of growth. Right now, the consumption is at around, let's say, 1.7 kg per annum, which is very low as compared to, let's say, Western Europe, which is around 15, and North America, which is 25. So there's quite a lot of potential to grow, and this is mostly driven by, let's say, the economic growth and the population's inclination towards using more of these hygienic products, more of these solutions, and that's why it's going to continue the growth. There have been a lot of countries which are, let's say, very important. Of course, you know, like Indonesia is important in terms of, which is driving this demand growth. South Korea, Vietnam, and Philippines is there. But one player that seems to be quite getting more prominent attention is Vietnam. And so that's something to look out for, where some of these producers are also trying to do a bit more. So very positive, I would say, for this region. Quite a lot of interesting things happening. At the same time, there's something need to keep a watch out for is, let's say, the capacity. Nothing to be alarmed of. It happens, and there's quite a lot of opportunity for producers who are based here to focus other places in the world. And some of them are already doing, like, let's say in case of APP, they are already quite focused, trying to ship outwards as well. So bit of balance is there, but there's a lot of opportunity also to absorb this additional growth that we are looking at. And what are all that capacity that we showed? What is going to happen? Just want to put it out here so that everyone have a good idea about it. Quite a lot of projects in the pipeline. On an average, you can see it's each of these around 30,000 tons of capacity being added by some of these players. And some of them are quite planned. Some of them are already completed, but they are rolling it out. As I mentioned in case earlier, like CAS, they have finished one, and also Berlichurker have done. So some of these projects are done, but they have more plans in the future to meet up with the demand. And that's been happening, and quite interesting for situation for even suppliers, I would say machine suppliers or some other solution providers in this region. So that's all I had. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to my colleagues. And we look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much. So just now we had an interesting Thomas, and since we are actually on the topic on pulp pricing, Tim, are you able to share with us how is the trend of used pulp price for the last 12 months and the next 12 months going to be like?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball, and thanks, Andy, and thanks, Somnath. That was really interesting. I wish I had a crystal ball for the next 12 months, because then I'd be involved in the futures trading market very successfully. But I think one of the things about recovered paper pulp markets, as we've observed them over the last year, I mean, the market pulp component of recycled pulp has grown, but it really is still a very integrated market. So whether in the same jurisdiction or by shipping across the sea, it's usually the same companies manufacturing, or related companies manufacturing the recovered pulp, the recycled pulp, and shipping it to themselves. So the market signals are not as clear as they are, say, in the in the BSK, BEK indications that Somnath has up here. As a general proposition, the market pulp price movements of the recycled pulp have been consistent, but a little more muted, a little softer than those for the other pulps, the main market pulps. And mainly that's because they're not so much traded, I've observed. I think the other thing that is really relevant in that is in a highly disrupted year, where we've seen a very significant pulp price increase, and recovered pulps, recycled pulps have gone with that. We've also seen recovered paper prices move upwards in general and on average in line with that. So the commodity that is recovered paper feeding into what is not quite a commodity yet, recycled pulp, in my view, not quite a commodity yet, feeding into that recycled pulp is moving consistently with the patterns you'd expect to see for an input to the pulp market. So what I think is going to be interesting over the next year is really what happens with the total pulp cycle. It's true that it is very much a commodity, input commodity, and it moves in the cycles that you can see in the charts here. But there's a very interesting period of time at the back end of 2017-18, when after they hit those peaks, you can see the pulp prices actually plateaued for a period of time. And that was the first time in a very, very long period that had happened. It is quite possible now, with most expectations being the pulp prices are at their peak, that they're going to plateau again. And if they do that, and I think that's quite likely, frankly, the second half of 2021, we might see some softening, but not a lot of decline in the pulp price. Then the recovered pulp, the recycled pulp prices are likely to stay stable with that. And that's likely to draw up the value of the recovered paper in general. I think we can see one driver for that, which is, notwithstanding the disruption from from China making the ultimate decision to cease receiving recovered paper from the rest of the world, pretty much all of the recovered paper that was in the market previously has been soaked up in other countries. And from down here, bottom end of Asia, the Oceania supply from Australia and New Zealand, which is 1.3 million tonnes a year or thereabouts, has rushed to Indonesia, and has rushed to Indonesia to be repulped into markets that are themselves growing. What markets? Well, we think the tissue market is taking up some of the volume that's been coming out of this region, at least, because we're close by to Indonesia. And I'd just add one other thing. It is instructive to me that there's quite a lot of drum pulping and cleaning technologies being introduced into countries like Indonesia and others at the moment to get a cleaner quality recovered paper. And that does suggest to me it's going into a better quality end product, and that's likely to hold its price up, I think. Recovered paper pulp is likely to hold its price up over the next year and more.
Okay, so since we are on this topic on pulp, so what are your thoughts about where alternative fibers for tissue production is going to be headed?
Yeah, so certainly from the perspective that I have, which I concede is based in a wood-consuming pulp environment for tissue production, the alternative is likely to be, sure, products like bamboo pulp. But I think the significance of the fibre shortages, the underlying fibre shortages, is large enough for the alternative to become more toward recycled fibres. And there's a constraint on that, at least in the developing economies. And Australia is a very good example of this. The fibre that is useful for manufacture into reasonable and good quality tissue is going to come from mainly clean office paper waste, the white streams of recovered paper. And last year, the consumption decline in this market, much like Western Europe and North America, was over 30%, and it will never come back. So the demand for the fibre is strong and is going to grow, and we can see that because that volume I was talking about is being sucked out of countries like Australia and New Zealand in this region and into Indonesia to be repulped, just as it was into China in the previous generation, if you want to think of it that way. But the volume that is available of the tissue grade recyclable paper is diminishing before our very eyes, and in 100,000 tonne increments is declining. So I do think recovered paper is likely to be more likely to be pulped now from office waste into tissue than it is back into office papers. First of all, I think tissue's value will win that opportunity. The other fibres that come in, I'm not as familiar with, but I appreciate that there's bamboo and other products. But I suspect that the constraint, the constraint is going to be the consumption of those materials into the future. And then where does the fibre come from when there's so much less office paper being consumed? One thing we have noticed is, and we've got a couple of clients in Southeast Asia who have focused their attention on their local supply chain because of the supply disruptions. So it's no surprise to see Indonesians buying, say, Australian or New Zealand recovered paper compared to North American recovered paper, because the shipping times and the disruptions are likely to be less. But more importantly, a lot of those countries don't have particularly good recovery rates throughout parts of Southeast Asia. So in Australia, it's maybe 50% of office papers that are post-consumer recovered. If you get to that level in some much larger countries with much bigger consumption profiles, then perhaps they'll be able to self-sustain their supply of office-based recovered materials. But if that doesn't happen, I think this use of office-based recovered papers for tissue production could diminish over the next few years, just because the consumption of those materials is diminishing so very rapidly.
Thank you, Tim. That was insightful discussion. So we have chatted about the raw material market. So let's right now maybe touch on the commerce side of the business. So Ronaldo, on the e-commerce side, can we see disruption in supply chain, a drastic change in consumer behavior, or due to the increase in online tissue shopping?
Okay. So first of all, with the pandemic, everybody got used it and the benefits of doing online shoppings, and also the benefit and the new way of work of home office. Yeah. We could see in APAC that the office paper or the writing and printing papers really decreased and suffered a lot. Yeah. In the other hand, as already commented for my colleagues, the tissue and industrial paper went extremely well. Yeah. We saw some disruption in the industrial paper industry, some cases where the raw material have delays to be delivered, and also drive this to also led to a increasing of the price of the raw material itself. And we continue to see, as already shown in the picture, that the tendency of the raw material will be increased in the next few months. Yeah. We also observed in the paper manufacturing process, some suppliers in the region have difficulties to deliver their products, for example, some chemicals, during the pandemic. And this somehow was good because local suppliers have been developed, yeah? And the paper producers adjust themselves to this new condition. And the important thing, they didn't stop their manufacturing. They continue producing, yeah? They surf in this wave of the higher demand. And this is very good. So for one side, some people suffer, but the other side, others really get benefit of that. And regarding your second question, yeah, we really observed in this period of 2019, 2020, an increase in the buying on the products, including tissue, online products. And also you see in the pictures, this tendency to be increase. And in countries like South Korea, Indonesia, and Singapore, this growth was more expressive, around 7 to 10%. So we see these marketplaces, online marketplaces like Shopee, Lazada, Tokopedia, and others are very well represented in the region, and they expected a huge growth in the upcoming years. Yeah, this means for the packaging industry will be a great opportunity, and also tissue will come together. Yeah, because the people are getting used about buying tissue as well from the online.
Okay, but how about when the situations become normalized again, and people starts to return to office? How will this affect the printing, writing, and tissue product supply?
So we observe it not only in the region but all over the world, that some companies already announced that they will remain with the home office completely, or they will do a kind of mixture between home office and normal offices. So that means the situation will not be the same as used to be. Yeah, that's clear, that we know that. And talking with different representatives from the paper industry in different countries of the region, yeah, we see that after pandemic, and the people can really go back to the offices, is expected that the tissue-related products for the offices and the printing and writing products will have a slightly increase, but will never ever be the same as before the COVID. Yeah? And regarding tissue, as already commented in one of the pictures, as soon as we have a revitalization of the hotel industries or tourism and so on, the away from home tends to be better and increase substantially the growth coming back that we used to be. Okay.
Okay. So because there's also articles saying that some of the paper producers are converting their machines to tissue, to ride a wave of the increase in tissue paper consumption. So when the return to office become a norm, what will be the next step for these manufacturers?
Yeah. So we honestly don't see a lot of requests to convert graphical paper machines into tissue production. Yeah, tissue machines are paper machines as well, but is much smaller than comparing to the conventional paper machines. But the tissue machines have particularly technology demands, basically because they are running with low consistencies, low basis weights. Yeah, and if you neglect some of these technology demands, the quality of the tissue that you will generate will be much probably suffer a lot, negatively suffer, comparing to the quality standards that are already in the market. So that means to sell the product, or you're going to drop your price substantially, yeah, or you have very difficult to sell the product in the end. We face an example to try to reuse an old newsprint machine and convert it to a new tissue production. At the end of the study, we come to the total ownership costs of the rebuild, basically the same as the installation of a completely new tissue machine. And a new tissue machine without any compromise in production efficiency and any compromise in terms of the quality. So that means it's good to study all the cases, has to be studied case by case. We have to understand the constraints and the opportunities to use the machinery, but we have to know that. So a bigger paper machine has completely different dimensions, and somehow to accommodate this is not that easy, but has to be studied. What we do really see in the market, and not only in the region, but in completely worldwide, is a great conversions to packaging grades. So the industrial paper demands is booming. So with all the e-commerce that we need more products, we need more packaging, and the grade conversion can bring extended life cycle to existing assets where these machines were supposed to die. Yeah? Only to illustrate this tendency, more than 40% of the existing European graphic paper machines has already somehow added non-graphic capabilities. And we from Void Paper have an extensive list of conversion rebuilds all over the world to open opportunities and to bring profitability and competitiveness to this business. Okay.
Okay. Since we are touching a bit on the machines as well. So, you're talking about old machines and when they're about to die. So how do you see the maintenance of the machine in the APAC, Asia Pacific region? Are they being done on a preventive maintenance schedule, or do they really take care of things only when things start to fail and they are all panicking?
Yeah, that is. Look, APAC is a completely diverse region and countries with completely different stage of development. We see cases and companies, of course, that they operate in a very reactive mode of maintenance. That means when breaks something, you replace it. Yeah. And we have extremely cases where they have breaking parts and they don't replace anything and neglect and sometimes create a very unsafe situation. In the other hand, we see companies that are moving into the direction of digitalization and already getting all the benefits for this industry 4.0 products. During the pandemic, we, Voith Paper, we have delivered some interesting cases in the region, providing remote services to maintenance, to inspection, to audit, to commissioning, and startup services. We saw the customer understand, use the benefit, and are asking and requesting more and more this modality of services. So as we comment last time, Voith create a concept called paper making 4.0 with digital products. And during the pandemic, some products was very well appreciated by the customer. One of them was, they call it on-call video, that is virtual presence. And the customer can also access our specialists 24/7. Another product is what we called Voith Paper Web Shop Platform, where the customers can access easily, safely, and order their components and parts without physical contact. Also was developed several other products in this regard, this paper making 4.0, in order to bring higher production efficiency and higher availability to the paper mills. Also, again, increasing profitability and competitivity. Okay.
Okay, so remote maintenance is going to be the go-to solution, moving forward to actually, keep your machine up and running in a healthy state to get the best out of your machine. So, thank you everyone for sharing. So, before we start our question and answer, in conclusion on the recovery after COVID, what will be the opportunities that, everyone can actually share to our audience here that they can actually keep a lookout for, or if they already have something, in mind that we can actually help to, reconfirm some of their doubts.
Okay.
Yeah. So since you're online, Ronaldo, would you like to, start?
So as a conclusion from my side, digitalization is a reality and full integrated in our lives. In the other hand, only the technology is not enough. You need mindset change to implement such a concept, and also training your people. Otherwise, you're going to fail. So digital products are being developed to really reduce customer pain points, and also inside of our industrial environment is the same. So the products must bring and higher efficiency, higher availability, better operation for the teams, and so on. So the best practices that we learn during the pandemic will remain. I'm pretty sure about that, because the people already got the benefits in this different way of working. One example is a plant in Australia that we deliver this product with virtual presence. So the customer made overall of a section of the machine using this concept, this paper making 4.0 concept. So after the job was finished, so the customer already said, okay, next year shutdown, I use exactly the same concept, even that we have or we don't have pandemic, because they really face the goodness of using such a service. I think one important thing that we already comment, the e-business will grow. Opportunities are there. And the opportunities we see a lot in tissue and the industrial paper that will bring profitability to this condition. So you have to make your homework, make your let's say operation more feasible, more efficiency, and so on. Get the best out of that.
Thank you, Ronaldo. So, Tim, do you have anything to share, since Ronaldo touched on Australia? So we are back there now.
Yes. Well, he's right to do that. We often talk about down here the tyranny of distance. And I was saying to you earlier, our shortest international flight from Australia and New Zealand is 7 hours to Jakarta or to Singapore. And so he's quite right about the tyrannies of distance. But I do think we were talking before about fibre and the shorting of recovered fibre because of consumption declines of office-type papers. And what that means for alternative fibres is they will become more expensive, more valuable and more expensive. So that's what scarcity does. The other fibre, of course, that we have to take account of then is wood fibre. And all the modelling that we do for the region and to some extent internationally, and certainly for Australia, says that the value of the fibre is growing, but not growing, but is growing faster than the price is growing. So if I was a tissue producer, I would be concerned to ensure that I have my fibre strategy pretty well established 3 to 5 years in advance, buying pulp from a local pulp producer who doesn't have locked-in fibre could see me paying always at the high side of the prices, where perhaps the more integrated models are, no matter what the fibre source, the more integrated models and the better supply chain and procurement practices, the strategic practices, are more likely to give you the opportunity to be an efficient producer into the future. It's very possible that fibre prices are on their way up for a long period of time, notwithstanding the cycles that always happen.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So Matt, do you have anything to share with everyone here?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with what Tim said. You know, it is important to look after your fiber strategy, because there's going to be a bit of substitution happening when, you know, the price gets bigger between the BHKV and BSP, and that will trigger some interesting situations. That's definitely something to look forward to. And we're also seeing a bit of a less reselling happening in China, and I think that will push the price down. So overall, have to be a bit careful about that particular aspect of the cost factor. And important one also is this is a good time to optimize the operation. There's a good time to make the operations more resilient, which it has, the past 1 year has shown a lot of these, let's say, loopholes or weaknesses. And this is a good time to kind of improve the operation, do the best, so that you're prepared for the next cycle, which would be challenging for a lot of players in the so-called new normal, which would not be like what we are facing right now, but it would not be that easy either. But overall, there's a good prospect. There's quite a lot of good growth happening, and a lot of the players are well placed to actually tune in on that.
Thank you so much. So our panelists has actually shown us, what the industry it has been, coming along, and forecasted, what we can actually foresee, and also a little bit of hint on, what to look out for to ensure that your productivity and your sales and manufacturing are, running smoothly. So next, we will, return to the floor, and it will be time for the question and answer. So I have one questions coming in that, they are looking for suppliers, other than market as they are trying to, divert their supply source to another region. So anyone has any idea, what will be the preferred or potential, countries to look for the raw materials?
Perhaps if I could just say, I do think that supply disruptions have focused a lot of attention on the ability and the resilience of the local supply chain to meet the majority of needs. I described it as a tyranny of distance, but it's also the tyranny of time. It's not okay to be unable to produce because you can't get some of your materials over a distance. So I do think very often we look a long way afield when maybe we should look very close first to find where our best partner might be. And that might apply to many materials, perhaps not to all, but I think we're going to need to focus some more attention on that. These supply disruptions they might be pandemic related this year. I wonder what they'll be related to next year. I don't know, but because I don't know, I want to secure my supply chain, both up and downstream of me. So I think local is important right now.
Okay, so any more questions coming in? Don't be shy. Otherwise, okay. Otherwise, we have another question for Mr. Ronaldo.
Okay.
Yes. So it's regarding, let me get the questions out. You know, will green hydrogen open opportunities ahead for the paper industries in the Southeast Asia region, Asia Pacific region?
Honestly, we don't see a lot of movements in the region in this regard, but sooner or later this will come. I will talk a little bit in general what we are doing and what we see how it should do. Yeah. So in general, we expect the hydrogen to be one of the pathways to decarbonize the industry, including the paper industry. So it can be a key facilitator to replace the fossil fuels and reduce the CO2 emissions in many industrial sectors. To fully decarbonize industries and production sites, a mixture of measures have to be taken. So this includes not only the green hydrogen, but also other renewables, such as green electricity, biomass, or biofuels. For the paper industry, where large amount of heat are required at the production sites, the direct use of the electric energy to heat production has the highest efficiency. The usage of hydrogen to fuel for energy production suffers a lot from the energy losses. So now for it, what we are doing, we are currently dedicating development activities to increase the directly usage of the electric energy to produce heat for the dryer section. That is the most consumption part. Along the global emerging, let's say, hydrogen economy, mainly driven by the mobility sector, it could be also be a viable option for selected paper mills to make use of the green hydrogen as a substitute for natural gas and coal. And finally, we see potential for so-called negative emissions technologies, where the CO2 is captured from the atmosphere, and it is in this regard, Voith is cooperating with startup companies to introduce novel ways of pyrolysis and bring this concept to the paper industry, which use biomass to generate renewable thermal energy and produce biocarbons. So this will be something, the way that we think and we see how we can decarbonize the industry, including the paper industry.
Thank you. So we have also another questions is regarding the future investments in converting equipment in the region. You know, is there any you know, opportunities that are going to happen anytime soon? So anyone who can actually give an insight on these particular questions?
What I think in terms of conversion, the industry is moving to this 4.0. So opportunities in this area have tremendous to optimize efficiency, and everybody knows the efficiency of a converting line is very low because you have to change a lot of products, and normally customer wants a lot of products. So that means, if I understand right your question, so the tremendous opportunity for 4.0 products in terms of converting will be in this regard as well.
Okay. So next question I have is regarding, so hemp. So not sure if I pronounce it correctly. I'll spell it out. HEMP. What are the possible outlooks for this particular pulp in the Asia Pacific region? Anyone? Nope.
Nope.
Okay. No worries. You know, we can always look for another questions that are coming up. Yeah. Okay, this is on packaging. maybe next one of these interesting questions regarding the future of the pulp and paper industry in the region. You know, what is the best way to attract the younger generations into the industry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be quite a difficult question to answer. You know, someone can just share some ideas that you think, you know,
So
actually some
in my
future.
perspective,
Yeah.
So the young guys, and I have 2 kids as well, when you say, guys, do you want to work in a paper industry, they say never. Yeah. What do you want to do? I want to do gaming. I want to do something related to these new generations of industry 4.0 or whatever, automation. Yeah. So if the industry bring these things to make it more sexier, yeah, I'm pretty sure the young guys will come. Yeah.
I think I can add a little piece to that. I think that's exactly right. This is one of the most technologically advanced industries in the world, and it also is one of the few industrial products that is manufactured in a sustainable manner from sustainable materials that are renewable. So we've found that the engineer level in Australia, recruiting people from their general engineering degree into the paper specific areas, chemical or mechanical, but chemical in particular. One of the reasons they do that is because they want to be involved in the biosolutions to the planet's many problems. And that's actually attracted more people in, and can I say it broadly, of a better quality candidate, at least at the graduate level. I think there's great hope for recruiting people given our big story to tell.
Okay. So I have a question coming in on containerboard markets in the Asia Pacific region. So, you know, they are asking, you know, what is the current situation? Is the price going to be stabilizing, you know, anytime soon? So any taker for this question?
It is specific to specific kind of containerboard?
I think it's more the general containerboard market.
Well, it's quite similar as in case of tissue, you know. So it has been exposed to very unusual times. That's why definitely it has shown different response as well. But a lot of producers are kind of finding ways to stabilize it, and so it will tend to stabilize in quite some time soon. However, again, the pulp price is a big topic, and I think that's something, as has been said by some other people as well, that they have to find ways to source it effectively, ensure that they optimize their operations so that they make the most of it, especially in the recycled fiber segment, have to look a bit more domestically. And I think this combination of efforts will bring the price in a reasonable level.
Thank you. Okay, blah, blah. You know, we have a technological questions on recovered fiber. And how about, let me see. How about what is the future of recycled material conversion globally?
Good question.
Yes.
It's a good question. If I may jump into this, it is a good question, but of course, from our perspective, we can share on what's been happening in, let's say, paper segment. And I think there's a lot of potential, but also there's a lot of resistance happening, a lot of conversion, a lot of policy changes are happening to kind of ensure that it is actually doesn't turn out to be another big waste generator. So, but of course, the key part of this whole cycle would be that people understand that they have to sort it out right from the beginning. So rather not mixed waste is not really helpful. So I think that's one topic that have to be looked at. There's a lot of potential there, and there are a lot of countries are gearing towards it, but regulations are also coming at the same time. So have to find the right balance so that you can do it in an environmental friendly way.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, we have some questions coming in again. Okay, industrial. So maybe these questions, which countries in APAC have the most competitive advantage in the paper segment or the industrial paper segment? Any of my experts here have any idea? Otherwise, I'll just move on to the next one. Sorry, man. Okay. Any more questions coming in? So we have not much of the questions coming in right now. Let's give them a few more minutes and see what we can get.
Maybe Andy, I can answer that industrial paper, but not like specific to any grades. But of course, it's very much in Asia Pacific, the ones who would have, let's say, a competitive advantage or cost competitiveness would be the ones in Indonesia and China, because their production lines are much more new. They are quite a huge amount of production lines as well. So they are definitely one of the most, let's say, cost competitive ones. But of course, we have to go into specific grades to see which ones might be the champions in that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So I think that's all the time we have today for the questions and answer, and also for the webinar discussion. So it has been a very exciting time ahead. So with all the information that's provided by our expert panels, I believe you can map out your future for this industry in the Asia Pacific region. So if you need more information, more in-depth discussion help, please reach out to Somath, Tim, or Ronaldo in whichever areas of interest that you will have. So, and last but not least, don't forget to join us in Bangkok in May 18 to 20, BITEC next year for our live event. So
we hope.
Yes, I want to see everyone there.
Very good.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
now.